All right, we're recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Cathode Ray podcast. It's a very special one today. Firstly, I'm joined by my good friend, Steve Nutter. How you doing, mate?
Hello, Lewis. Yes, we're very pleased today to have a special guest with us.
That is right. We're joined by Martin Hejnfelt from
Hello.
Denmark. CRT modder extraordinaire. We're going to get through things. So, Martin, how you doing today, mate?
Fine, thank you. Very good, very good. I'm glad to finally be here and actually be here because I've been talking to Steve for some time to do something. So we finally got time for it. That's great.
That's good. So first of all, let's sit down. We're going to go through, have an audit of the beers we're all drinking. So
Yes.
Martin, you're our guest. What are you drinking this evening?
Yeah. So I'm drinking Kismeier Passion Ale, Passion Pale Ale. It's a local Danish brew thing.
Okay.
Yeah, with passion fruit. It's a pale ale with a hint of passion, apparently. It's good.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. What do you got, Steve?
Well, I actually have probably the weirdest concoction here in a beer can. This is something from a local brewery in the Nashville, Tennessee area called Southern Grist. And it is a sour, what is this called? A sour ale, yes. And it's marshmallow, peanut butter, and blueberry jelly.
What?
So hopefully I don't just vomit all over my camera screen here
We will see.
after about 30 minutes of drinking this stuff. So
Does it taste good or was it all right to drink?
I mean, if you like peanut butter sandwiches in liquid form, probably so. So let's.
Isn't that
How
so
about the
American?
color?
Like Martin,
It's literally the color of jelly.
Martin,
Not
have you
sweet.
ever had a peanut butter sandwich, Martin?
I don't think I've ever had one like how you would do it in the US, but we have done it before, because everybody hears about peanut butter sandwiches, so we have done it. But I don't know, the bread you guys have in the US is always so white that you get like blue stains on your retina after looking at it, and I don't think we actually have something that white in Denmark, but we'll try.
It's like pound cake. It's not even.
Yeah.
It's literally not even bread. I laugh. I'm like, I go in there and I'll grab some of that stuff from the shelf. There's a couple of them. Oh, there's this version called butter bread, and that's literally, it's just like squishy cake in bread loaf, and you're like, this is not good for you to eat. This is
Fat
not
and
good.
carbohydrates, that's nice.
Right.
Whoop, slap some of that peanut butter
better
on
get some
there.
more fat on.
Then just wash it down with this drink here, and you'll be perfectly,
Oh my God,
perfectly
you-
American. There we
Yeah,
go.
absolutely American. The eagle flies over and fireworks. Something blows up. And it's great.
For sure.
Here I'm drinking, tonight I'm drinking this new one for me, the Garden Brewery Pale Ale, and tells me that it is from, made in Croatia. Cool. I didn't know they had
Croatian
some-
beer?
yeah.
I don't think I've ever had Croatian beer.
No, it makes you think, I mean, I was going to say it makes you think of some real Eastern European shit, but then again, I live in Estonia, so I can't really say, probably Estonia is way more Eastern European than Croatia these days, but refreshing, gently bitter, and lightly tropical. Okay, delightful. So,
Well, that's
anyway,
wonderful.
boys.
Yeah, normally
Huh.
Lewis and I are recording these episodes, and it's it's like 9 a.m. for me, so I don't get the opportunity like tonight it's only just after lunchtime. So now at least it's the sun's been up a little while before I could start drinking a
Drinking
beer.
your peanut butter ale.
That's right.
Yeah, that's when you skip the meal and you just go straight for the liquid diet here.
Yep. That's going to be
But
good.
yeah, Martin
So,
alluded to him and I having just a lot of conversations behind the scenes on just some of the awesome projects he's worked on over the years, and I always wanted. This was kind of one of the good, amazing things about making the show now with Lewis is that with the Cathode Ray podcast, I have an opportunity now to get on a podcast with someone like Martin, and it's not just me fumbling around talking. We actually have a good moderator because Lewis is awesome at that. So, we'll get into a lot of the projects that you're working on, obviously, right now, which is some cool new stuff, and then a lot of the earlier things that I'd been, talking to you behind the scenes on for what feels like 3 years at least. I'm not exactly sure on that timeline, but
Me neither. Time flies, and we've had Corona for 2 years, so wow.
Exactly.
I'm just here still, so that's great.
Martin,
so
what
that
do you...
means
it's probably longer than 3 years because I'm still in the funk where the last 2 years feels like it's like eight months that never end.
Yeah. It's a bad dream. But at least we're here. So
yes,
that's great.
we're here now. That's it.
We are here. So, Martin, tell us, what do you work like? Not like what are you just working on in the last week? Like, what are you fiddling with? What are you playing around with right now?
Yeah. Okay. So, as I maybe you noticed, I've started working on this BKM-15R protocol stuff, and so I did the small program for the for PC, so you can control it with a PC, and then I want to put it down onto some hardware. So I've took this it's a small Arduino thing and a LAN port to make a wireless version of it. So you only need this part, and of course put it into a case or something. But so this should be able to control a BVM A series, hopefully
from across the room.
It actually already does, from across the room or wherever. But it actually already works. I just need to make it a bit more refined or whatever you call it. So that is what I've been working on for now. But I have so many smaller projects. Also the BKM-10R, which is actually an 11R version here. It's also something I've been working on. I'm changing the layout a bit, getting some new buttons and stuff like that. But so just a lot of small projects while we wait for the component crisis or whatever we would call it, the part shortage, to actually stop, so we can get on with actually making something new. So that's for now. That's what I've been doing. All this remote stuff. But there's a lot of other projects that I want to work in also. But
so with the what you showed us with the 15R there, so the Arduino's connecting to a Ethernet module, and then that's what's you plug that into the monitor, and then the Arduino is getting Wi-Fi off that.
Yeah, this is an ESP32 which has Wi-Fi, and so that connects to the Ethernet plug here, which goes to the monitor, and so this is then the link to the outside world via the Wi-Fi. And, this is like, $15 worth of components. So you can control it. Of course, it's not very pretty like it is here. And then I wanted to make a small PCB, maybe a couple of buttons just to be able to do something, and put it into a nice little 3D printed case.
Okay, that's nice. I think
that was the idea.
That module that you spoke about, the ESP32, that's the same one that the GBS control uses.
I can't remember. I think maybe it's using the ESP8266 maybe. I'm actually not sure. It uses something like that. I think it's the smaller one. I have one here somewhere. You can't see my desk, but it's a mess.
Yeah, no, that's like a really, just like, there's so much cool stuff that I'd never really thought possible, and then I was like, oh my goodness, look what Martin's working on right now. Like that idea, it's a brilliant idea to just kind of get away from. You could really have your monitor really streamlined looking then, because you don't have to have any of the controller, because the next thing you do is you find the controller for a 20-inch monitor, and then the controller just sits there. Or do you try to track down the little other Sony BKM set, and by that time you're spending like $400 or $500 on just being able to control it. Yeah, and then if something happens to that control unit, you're kind of up Schitt's Creek without a paddle, I guess. So you got these new ways to get into these things. I know a lot of people will be super excited too to see that other. I mean, I saw it even before this. You showed it to me, the 11R remake, or the portable remote remake. Now, I guess one of my other questions is, when you're going through the protocol on this new project, like what kind of how much functionality are you getting compared to the original? Can you just do everything?
Here you're going to do everything except for I haven't looked into the memory card, but otherwise for now you can do all functions will be exactly the same. Because the protocol is extremely simple, so I've just put everything in. The web server that's going to run on this is going to give a small picture looking exactly, or somewhat like the original remote, just so it looks a bit cool. But of course, the memory card stuff is still another thing, and I have actually no idea how all this memory card stuff works on these BKMs. I never used it, so for now it's only for fun.
I don't know about the memory card, and I was kind of wondering because there's really only one practical reason to use that memory card. I feel like, and it's to change the firmware on a specific monitor. So if you're already using your system, wouldn't it just be it would already have its own firmware, right? So it wouldn't. Or
I guess
is it going to
you know,
use the most recent?
But it's the monitor's firmware, you mean, though, not the
it's the
controller's.
monitor's firmware. I don't know if you can. I suppose you can upgrade the controller's firmware also.
Yeah,
I would
I
think
didn't
so.
know
I
if
think
you
you
could
can control
upgrade
both.
the monitor's firmware via this new
You
connection.
can, as far as I
can.
know. I think you can.
Yeah.
I think
and
you
that
can.
might be a
Point of
better
it, yeah.
option because it is a pain in the butt to deal with those memory cards because it's just those old SRAM cards
Exactly.
that you
But
can't
that's for
hook into any new systems.
that's for the 10R. The this one, like the 15R, uses this memory Pro Memory Duo Sony thing crap that nobody uses except Sony. And I actually, because I was trying to use all this SRAM stuff, so a friend of mine just had this huge stack of cards, but the problem is none of them are actually SRAM, so none of them work.
Yeah, I think it was that they were going to be expensive. I was going to order one from AliExpress, and it was going to be like 30 or 35 euros or something for that particular
That's a
SRAM
cheap
version.
one, isn't it? Isn't that a cheap one?
Could be, yeah. That's the AliExpress one, so yeah, maybe that's the
Okay,
cheap
I have
version.
no idea if it works or not. I should be having a 2 megabyte SRAM card laying for me, sitting in a package shop somewhere. A guy sold me, but I have no idea if it's going to work or not because some people say they can only get the original ones to work and blah 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 blah. But what I really wanted to do was getting rid of the requirement of having some ancient technology like SRAM cards that
that's
nobody
the worst.
uses at all and nobody has been using and everybody has thrown out. So screw that and let's get some SD card at least.
And that's so funny because it's literally something that like nobody would keep. Even like the biggest collector of anything is never going to think, oh man, I better hang on to this SRAM setup
Right.
just in case somebody
A new
needs it.
firmware comes in, yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So,
So, never
yeah,
would
that's-
have, you never would have keep them. It's firmware
and
and,
Mark-
settings. I think if you had a whole rack of something, you could save the settings to them and then in each monitor or something.
Yeah, you could. I guess you could do that, and I guess this was the whole idea, But none of us are using this in the broadcast studio anymore. Right. I don't think Sony ever thought that they were, the $10,000 monitors were going to play Super Mario 3. 15 years after. So all this stuff that you can use with, I think, I want to do it just to try to see if it's possible. And then we can remove that requirement, but I have no idea if people are actually upgrading firmwares. Do you ever upgrade a firmware or what?
I mean,
Steve,
I've talked to people like that have done it, but I've never actually had to do it. And that's the funny thing is I've never had to upgrade the firmware, and the card that I've got, I've never had to use it, so it just sits there, and the battery in it is dead. So
Yeah.
I've never even tested the card. I don't, and it's a terrible thing to say. Every once in a while, I'll pull it out, so if you do actually need it for some reason, tell me, and you can have this one. I'll send it to you because again,
So that we can try. Yeah,
other
if the other one doesn't work. That's cool.
because
Thank you.
this one came directly from Sony, and it came like it says Sony on it. It came with my last load I bought from a broadcast studio.
Oh, cool.
They had the 11R, and it still had the card in it from when they bought it new back in
awesome.
2001. They had like some of the earliest D series monitors I've seen ever, like within the first 100 serial numbers.
Huh. Okay.
And so they paid a fortune for them originally. One
They
of
must
them, yeah, one of them had a new tube installed. They all ended up. I don't own any of them anymore. Funny thing enough, except for one that's got a bad tube in it because it had 68,000 hours. So they definitely rode that one. But the other two,
when did they say that you should change it? What is 30,000?
yeah, it depends. I mean, it can be 30,000. It gets less long, or the bigger the tube, the less it basically lasts.
Okay.
Especially the D series tubes, which the funny thing was, I talked to Save on Pat about this. In the designs of the D series, the supposedly the hardware could like push way more, like it could push more than the tube itself could handle. And
Nice.
so a lot of times, just from turning brightness and contrast up way too high on the monitors, you could blow out the tube and make it pop.
Oh, really?
And so they had whole, safety design. They had a new board they added later on in the life cycle of the D series. And the only reason I found that out was because one of the three had them installed, and it had a new tube installed in it, where the whoever was using it did that. They blew the tube out by just basically, if you crank up the brightness, the monitor a lot of times will just shut itself off, overload. And but if it doesn't shut off quick enough, it'll surge through it, and it'll literally in the service bulletin from Sony, it says that it can crack the neck and make like a violent.
What?
Yeah,
that seems like that's actually pretty good to know, because when I was messing with the BKM-15R remote and playing with the knob commands, suddenly my brightness went to 2000 or whatever instead, and then that could actually be dangerous. I don't want to blow out my screen doing this stuff.
So you got to put some safety fail safes in there, maybe, Martin, or something.
Or something, maybe. I don't know, because if this is the D series, I assume they have fixed that on the A series.
Okay. Yeah, the A series is not. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think it's as bad in the A series, but they do use the same tubes, so. But it's just that they redesigned it.
Yeah, I think it was with upgraded electronics, basically, wasn't it?
It's a different electronic system. Yeah, it's better. I don't know. It's better for certain things, but you know more about the A series than probably anybody.
God, I do, really? Huh.
Yeah, come on. You spent more time reverse engineering that than probably.
At least the boards, the half of whatever is inside there, I have no clue about. CRT is still some sort of black magic in the end. We deflect electrons. Yeah, right. Okay, just keep doing that.
Yeah, it does kind of sound funny. Like Lewis and I were having a discussion in one of these episodes early on about Aquadag, and that's the black paint on the back of the tubes.
Oh, yeah.
And how it actually, I was laughing because I had just researched it, and it serves like 4 purposes beyond just making the tube darkened on the outside. And so you start researching like what it's part of on the system on a CRT, and you're like, what? How the hell is this like actually doing this? And and it's just at enough frequency where our eyes don't look at it, and it looks like crazy to us. Because if our eyes could see faster, it would look terrible. It would have to be faster. But it's an interesting piece of science.
It really is. People say because I've been working on a lot of this stuff, I must know a lot of the insides of these monitors, and a lot of people actually, write me, hey, do you know? And then with some whack question, and it's just like, no, I have no clue, because it's like, it's a deflection yoke, and you put in some current, and then it deflects, and it hits the exact spot on a grid of phosphor. It's just like, whoa. Sure, I have no clue about that stuff.
I think Thomas Dady he's the man.
Yeah, exactly. That guy knows a lot of stuff.
He needs an award. Sure. How he's doing that, I have no idea. But he's
me neither. But I suppose it, research, and they have. I guess I've seen people do their own CRTs in their garage. So I guess you can do something. Maybe it's not that advanced. I have no clue. But to me, the CRT is still some sort of black magic, at least, when it comes down to the actual analog part. I am a digital guy mostly, so this is where I try to stay if I can.
Actually, Martin, speaking of that, what education do you have, Martin? What did you study, or do you have your degree, or how did you get
I have a master's degree in computer science.
Oh, no shit.
I think is the appropriate word. It's a very long title. And it's like a university degree, master's. Okay. Well,
but I also have a computer science master's degree, actually. But that's software, though. Now you're a hardware guy.
Actually, I am mostly a software guy, but I do everything. In my daytime job, I do mostly software, but we also design hardware, and there's a lot of protocol stuff, and working with whatever parts, peripherals, and all that stuff. So I think the correct term is a full stack developer, which most people say that doesn't exist, because you can't do full stack, and they are actually somewhat right, because you can't do full stack good.
Yeah, you can't do too much, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, Lewis and I actually were looking at a really cool video that was done based on your work recently, and I mean, personally, I thought it was awesome because you were even in there. You were talking about your love for retro hardware, and you're like, even in my job now, I'm working with people that are using technology from the 90s, right? And then you're still integrating that in with your customers and helping them use that. And then you mentioned that your first computer that got you into tech was a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you wanted to like elaborate any on that and like your childhood. Is there any childhood memories about this Commodore 64?
Of the Commodore 64, yeah. Well, the thing was that while all my friends had Amigas and all this stuff, I went directly from Commodore 64 to PC in the mid 90s or something like that. So I got the Commodore when I was 8 years old, I think, or something like that, and I remember, first of all, we just started playing it, of course, like you did when you're only 8. And then as I grew older, I had some of my friends started doing work, programming or stuff like that on it. And so I guess that was the first time we actually tried to do something with the Commodore. But because I was, like do technical stuff or whatever you would call it, it should be noted, though, that I was quite young. So a lot of this stuff was, you went to the library, you bought it, or didn't buy, what do you call it? You got a book. Borrowed, exactly. You borrowed a book, and then the book is like just full of these codes that you said and you entered, and then when it comes out, it's a syntax error because you missed that one comma at 10,000 characters before, so you didn't have to go through that stuff. So, but the whole tinkering with the Commodore was what got me tech interested, and then it's just been going on from there. Started soldering. Also somewhere in the 90s, whatever it was, and doing all these small projects. There was a company, I don't know if it exists in the US, it's called Velleman. But they made these small kits of whatever that you could solder together. There was a guy put this component here, here, and here, and then you have an electronic dice or electronic die or whatever, something like that. A meter to register sound pressure, all that stuff, and buying these kits and soldering together was something that I did, and building speakers and all that stuff.
Okay. Was your Commodore 64, was it cassette or a disk drive?
No, a cassette to start with. And then you had this book, so you know where you had to rewind or get the tape at to play this game and that game. And then, of course, I got disk drives later on.
That's great. I mean, you said that most of your friends had Amigas, and it's interesting. I mean, I grew up in Australia, and we were also, we're a PAL territory, and somehow, I had an Amiga. My next door neighbor had a Commodore 64. That's how I know about the cassette and the drive thing. Mm-hmm. And it's also very similar, like how related Australia was to Europe. We had PAL stuff. We had Spectrums and things like that were not Amiga, that were not common in America. So I understand that. I skipped the C64. I had the Amiga 500, did my basic program on that, the same thing, type it all in and come up with something in Amiga Basic. And then, eventually you move on to the PC afterwards. So
yeah, the Amigas was like this expensive thing that, especially my cousin had one that when we went there, we always had to play the game called Menace or something like that, which was one of these, side-scrolling shoot 'em ups. And it was just, because the graphics were really better on the Amiga. So I was like, wow, Amiga. But I didn't have the, the money for it. And in the end, the Commodore 64, it's a glorious machine. And it worked really, really good for me.
Yeah, Commodore 64 is still an awesome machine. Now, did you have a Commodore monitor to go with that?
No. We used the normal TV at the time. I don't even think I knew that there was a real Commodore monitor at the time. Everybody was using the TV at all the time. So this whole monitor, the professional monitor thing, is actually very new to me. Before, of course, PC monitors and stuff like that I have been using, but separate monitors is at least something that I've never given really a thought before until 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I got this JVC that needed this what was an IFC01 COMG card, of which there's a lot of clones, and I also designed one. And this was when I got into the professional monitor stuff. So I'm still very, very new to it. actually.
That project on that JVC monitor was definitely the first thing I saw. I remember because I had one of those monitors, the JVC, and it was a 15 it's a TMH CG 150 or something like that. It's a 15 inch. Well, they say 15 inch, but it's 14 inch. I really liked that whole monitor because it cracked me up. It's like, oh well, Sony's got 13 inch screen, we'll make it 14. And then if you read the document, it's like if Sony can do 600 lines, we're doing 750. And so it was just like, how do we one up Sony on each one of these things? So basically, when you tried to go sell the JVC monitor versus Sony, it's like, oh, well we're 1 inch bigger than that. Oh, well, we do this better. So, but the problem I had with that was that component and an RGB card in that monitor, it's pretty much just as much of a ghost as like the 68X, I think. I don't know that I've seen it. I don't know.
The original ones.
Yeah, I've never. That's one of the original cards that I've never used.
Oh, really? Okay.
On a monitor, but I have used a lot of your variations on it, and it was actually even before I think the first one I got might have been someone else made it. The guy in New Zealand, James.
James Vanderloof or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Jam.
So he made one or two of them and sent them over to me, and they just worked perfectly. So that was where I remember finding your first work. But correct me. Did you do those solo JVC mods before that? Like, I remember seeing on your blog page.
The first thing I did was like the clone card, which was a different version than the one Jam did.
Okay.
But we all based off the same schematics in the end. But I just wanted to try to do something, so I did that. But then pretty quickly I got some of these smaller JVC monitors which needed all this hacker stuff to actually do RGB. So that was a bit after. The small, what was it, DTV 100 CG or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I saw. You have a couple of other JVC monitors, and honestly, I get questions, which this is kind of, you might find this funny. I get people that will write me, and they'll be hundreds, thousands of miles away from me, and they're like, do you know about this this hack of this JVC monitor? And I'm like, of course I know about it. But they're like, can we do this of this JVC? And I'm like, yes, but do you realize that it's like the last guy I was talking to was in the state of Washington, which is the other side of the United States from where I'm at. So I was like, you realize that you're going to spend $300 shipping it back and forth to me. And a lot of times I'm like, I can literally find you an 8-inch RGB Sony BVM and just sell you that for the same price as you to send me. I said, Martin's projects like that are really meant, the only way you're going to save money at doing it is to basically figure it out and eventually try it to do it yourself. Exactly. Otherwise, it's going to, because it's not, that's what I'm saying. Like the price, there is no price to pay on the amount of time. I can't imagine how many hours you have to put in each time to put, like, to devise the plan and actually have it work on your designs for some of those things. But just to follow the instructions and do it and test it, and not only that, you get the monitor and who knows what kind of condition it generally is in to begin with. So at the same time, it's like, it's not, I'm like, it's like $500. You're going to spend like $500 or $600 on a 9-inch JVC to just add RGB to it.
It makes no sense. The guides were actually meant to be, to make it people able to do it themselves, because it really doesn't make sense to pay people to do this. Of course, if for whatever reason you really want this specific monitor, but I tried to at least to make the guides so people could follow it themselves. But I get tons of questions, where my guides are kind of vague. People don't understand this and that, and then I try to help them out, of course, and most of the time it goes great. But I'm pretty sure some people has blown stuff also. People come in with a huge ass soldering irons and just start running these SMD components. It's like, oh, please stop. But yeah, the idea was that people could do this, and also just to document it. I find it pretty important. Just like when you do your videos, you document procedures and knowledge, and this is the whole idea of my blog or whatever we call it. That I just want to have the information out there, because I myself have been using information like that. So I find it important that we can keep this for people who are interested, and so we can have it doesn't have to be in one place. You just have to be able to search it up on the internet and actually find this stuff, because a lot of knowledge right now is being lost on Facebook and in closed forums and stuff like that. And I don't really like that. I want to have stuff coming out there so we can find it again later, or whoever is interested can actually search it up.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really do love your website, is because it's always there, and it's like you can always go there and find even really old stuff that you had worked on. And like you said, I try to tell people this, social media, like especially Facebook and like Instagram, they're almost the worst to try to go back and find any kind of archived information ever.
Really.
I mean, trying to find stuff just from like a day ago is tough enough. I found it like impossible to go back and look at work that I've done on posts from 2 or 3 years ago. It's like you just eventually give up after 20 minutes, and they're not good places to only post your information, especially stuff like what we're talking about. But yeah, go ahead, Lewis.
Martin, I was going to ask actually, with the Pro monitors thing, what's your general feeling about how available are they in Denmark? Because I'm interested. Steve's done such a good job at charting out the scene in America, and I think Europe, we're disjointed. We're different countries. Each country's got their own market, their own shipping. There's no way we can be united. Million EU laws, blah, blah, blah. So it's hard to get a Euro-wide view. We kind of have to look at each country. What's your feeling about finding monitors locally?
It's actually quite strange, because when I started 4 years ago, then I found it pretty easy to find stuff, but it has more or less dried up. But we should remember that in Denmark, we have Bang & Olufsen, B&O. So, and you can get B&Os for $5 to $10, for a 28-inch, of course, a consumer television. But then, because they are RGB capable, they have great sound and everything, they are really, really common. So it seems like the pro monitor scene is quite small in Denmark. The problem I also seem to at least face is that the broadcasters simply threw them out. I don't know what, 10 or 15 years ago, when everybody started moving to LCD, apparently in Denmark, because space is usually a premium in Denmark. So putting all that stuff in your basement was something people did for a year or two, and then they tried to give all these monitors away, and then they just threw them out. This whole used monitor or used TV at all, like you see in the Facebook groups, the CRT collective and stuff like that, where people say, hey, selling this whatever monitor, or not monitor, but consumer television, you almost don't see that in Denmark at all. You see B&O, and that's the only thing. The rest has simply been thrown out. The people don't sell TVs at all. Then there's, of course, some broadcasters they went to eBay, and then they go, oh, fuck, I have a gold mine. Can I say fuck? Oh, damn. But,
say many fucks, it's okay.
But then, some they say, oh, they went to eBay and said, oh, wow. And that's the other part, that we do see that there are some, and then they try to sell you these monitors at some ridiculous prices, which is usually much, much cheaper than in the US, but much, much higher than anyone in Denmark usually wants to actually pay. I think I paid 3,000 kroner for, which is, I don't know, divide that by approximately $6.50 dollars for my A14 F5M or whatever it's called, which I used when I was making the 68X, and that is by far the most expensive monitor I have bought at all. Does anyone have a calculator?
I was going to say 3,000 Danish kroner, was it?
Yeah.
What's the symbol for Danish kroner? DOK, I forget. I haven't traveled. DKK, that's right.
Like that. Yeah, DKK.
Okay,
But
400
maybe
euros. Okay, $500. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And you know, when the guy who wanted the money for that was just like, wow, I'm not gonna pay that. And I and I bought a one of these barcode monitors alongside, you know, just to get something along with it, and which I'm also gonna try to RGB mod at some point. But yeah, it's extremely expensive. And the more or less every other monitor I have, I've either gotten for free or have been spending almost nothing on them, at least. Of course, usually there's some driving, which you know, by Danish standards, or by US standards, I have not been driving at all. By Danish standards, it's something completely different. But you know, the actual pricing differs a lot. There was a guy who called me up and just say, "Come to my basement," and there's this huge stack of small 10-inch JVCs, and just say, take as many as you can, because otherwise you're just going to throw them out. So I just filled up my car, and it was in Copenhagen, so I had to drive there and drive back, you know, with a car full of small monitors. So, and the problem is that at the first turn, I could just hear them all just, Tim was, oh shit, but nothing happened actually, but you know, then, so I was the only guy going on the freeway with very, very slow, and people were honking their horns at me. But now I have a stack of small monitors that I have no idea what I'm going to use for.
Oh, yeah.
But
Next time something like that comes up, give me a call. I'll take the ferry to overnight to Stockholm. I'll be down there in 8 hours, down to across the border.
You can come down and get some B&O monitors. We have plenty of those.
Yeah, B&O.
I wanted to ask about the B&O monitors because I see television. Sorry, I see like one or two of them around in Estonia. Estonia was still a little bit poor, like still recovering from the Soviet Union at the time that they were popular, so we didn't have many. But we see a few, and my girlfriend loves them because they're stylish. Yeah. She's like, but they're the ones you like, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, let's get one of those because they look, they're thin and they look great. And and the few that are here are kind of expensive. So actually, okay, when we come for a road trip to Copenhagen or to Denmark, then I'm gonna hit you up and take a couple of B&Os with me.
Bring a truck, because you know, as I said, you can really get them for free. Usually, you don't pay anything for a B&O, at least very, very little. Of course, there are some people who think that they can get a lot of money for these because they were expensive, and there are actually still TV repairmen who sells. You know, used B&Os at crazy whack prices. You can find it on their website, and it's just like, who buys this stuff? I have no idea. But it exists.
Somebody's chasing nostalgia.
Yeah, so
we should just fill up a container.
They want that. Yeah, they want that TV that they saw. You know, well, that's the thing here in the United States. There was no RGB, and that's the reason everything's crazy, because there was no RGB. So even though we had component, and it's pretty close to the same effect, I don't really know what it is. If you take, for example, a U.S. component television and this is a CRT television, and you just put a component signal in, straight component, and then you take an RGB transcoded to component, like with the first thing I did it with would have been like a HD Retrovision cable that, you know, went from Super Nintendo. You get the Super Nintendo RGB modded, and then you can use a component, and it would show you the scan lines, and you're like, holy crap, you know, I used component. I never noticed the scan lines. And so that kind of what started it here in the U.S. It's just the fact that there was the only thing that was made that was technically RGB. An RGB monitor is a pro monitor.
A pro monitor, yeah.
And so...
but wait, talk us through again what you think is the difference between component and RGB. Because, I mean, in theory, they have the same amount of information. There's not like RGB's better than component or something.
I don't know what it... and maybe, you know, also maybe thinking about like... you can see, like I can go upstairs, and if there's not really anything else except I can put in S video into the TV, and then I can use the transcoded RGB, and I'll notice a difference where it shows more of a defined scan line, like the PVMs would look, where you'd actually see a horizontal scan line. Because if I don't, and I just used S video, I would see just as much of a scan line vertically as horizontally. So instead, you get a little bit of a look on there where you're just seeing the individual phosphors light up, and you don't see the defined scan lines everybody loves on 240p. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know why that
But
would
shouldn't
like,
that be the same?
it should be the same,
in
yeah.
theory.
But, so, well, and the truth is, I'm kind of like speaking here out of a little bit of a messed up deal where I shouldn't have said that. It's because it's not like, because the truth is, you can't, like, I can't go and get a component, a Super Nintendo, and hook it up. It probably would look the same, but they didn't have that, you know. So when you go, but you can tell on a lot of the TVs when you go from S video. That's what I should have said originally. Sure. S video to transcoded component or RGB, and then you can tell. I could see a lot more of those scan lines where it's like the 240p just looks more defined on the US sets. Some of them. I'm not really. I don't know why that, like, there was never, like, it was like the US was like, oh, we'll just take S video and be fine with that.
Well, I think the biggest step up is definitely from a composite to S video, and then again from S video to RGB or component is less of an improvement. But for sure, you know, I remember the first time I started using RGB, except from in my VGA monitors, of course, was with a DVD player in 2000 or something like that, and one of my friends came up with, did you try going into that menu and then change it into RGB? And it was just, I just remember we sat down and doing it just like whoa, because it just got so defined, because composite really does suck. Sorry to anyone who's watching this who's going to get mad at me now, but
there's definitely the composite fan club.
Yeah, there's a composite, and that's cool. And then people go like dithering or whatever. It's cool, I get you. But you know, when you tried RGB, in my opinion at least, it just looks more defined. It looks better, and then people say that's not the original look. Maybe that's true. I like the look. You know, it's just so defined. So good colors, I loved it. And I just remember doing that on a DVD when actually DVDs are component encoded in the end. So I suppose my DVD player was actually transcoding from component to RGB. But it was just like a new world opened up. And you know, I don't remember using RGB with my old component or with my old consoles. But I also have my Commodore, which had neither. But when I remember my friends who did have consoles, I don't remember anyone ever talking about using RGB in the days, even though our TVs were definitely capable.
So there was never, wait, and this is a good question. So you guys never remember anybody, say, having like, I'm trying to think, well, for example, the Genesis or Mega Drive, it would have output RGB natively, even if it's not great. Was there never like any kind of RGB market where they were like, get RGB or use your console to play RGB?
I have never heard something about, you know, the Super Nintendo also outputs RGB natively. It's just the small one that doesn't do it. So basically everything except the NES didn't. But you know, the Super Nintendo did, the Mega Drive did. But were that the only two? Of course, the PlayStation 2, all those stuff. But I just never remember it being a thing people talked about. And even up until now, when you see people selling their old PlayStations, it's always just with the composite cable.
Yeah.
And then now they want to use it on the flat screens, and it just looked like somebody threw up on the monitors. It looks terrible. Terrible.
I coming back to my Amiga story. So I share the experience as a PAL guy with Martin that it was all composite. No one was. Maybe once I heard something like buy high quality cables, and no one understood what that was or how it was going to plug in. But I remember, Now though, I remember back that I had my Amiga 500. I did have the Commodore monitor. I don't know how my parents afforded this. And it had a SCART connector on the back. And I remember, I'm like, what the fuck is this big thing? And at the time, I plugged it in. It's pretty easy. Any Dumbo can plug in SCART. And I did it, so that must have been, and I'm pretty sure that was an RGB output, but I had no idea. I was just like, yeah, my Amiga's better than all your stupid Mega Drives that you've got or whatever next door. Get out of here. And really, it then took, I'm trying to think, that was probably when I was, I don't know, 15 or probably 15. So it then took till I was 35. It took 20 more years till I understood that I had been using RGB SCART the whole long. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose also, especially with the Amiga, where you could actually get a more defined picture, on the Commodore, it really more or less didn't matter.
Yeah, true.
But when you did something like to the Amiga, it must really blow you away, because composite, the whole dot crawl thing, it just it tears my eyes up. It's why when looking at, I'm not a fan, not a big fan. But yeah.
It's funny. I can kind of mimic the same thing. Growing up, there wasn't a push for video quality. I think it was just like, holy crap, you can play some form of a video game in your house, right?
Yeah.
It's not so much, because I can remember being the oldest son and male cousin of the family and everything. It would be like, go over to grandparents' house, and I was always the one who'd have to go back there and mess with like the 4 RF switches, because it was just still even RF. And they're like, just unplug and plug it. And they're like, oh, you're so smart. You got the TV and the VCR working. And then like,
you're the magician.
You got rid of the blinking clock on there. And so it was, it's more or less just nonsense. But at the same time, you didn't really think. I never remember sitting there going, man, this looks like crap. I never really even think about it.
Nobody thought about it. But remember, everybody was talking about audio, because you always had to have like the audio cables from Monster, whoever, where the cables were so thick that you could run, your mains on it or whatever. And everybody was talking about that, but nobody was talking about shielded cables with with a proper screen and all that stuff. It's just whatever. But if your speaker cables were extremely huge, that was great.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Now I reflect back. Well, I was telling Steve, I think when I was in university, I lived with a mate of mine who wasn't at university, but he was a professional network cabler, like installing cables. So you wanted boxes of Cat5, we got it. You want crimpers, you want the whole thing, we could do whatever you want. And my friend Jay, he put in a really nice home theater, a couple of Sony tower speakers, and he had that in the year 2000. And I remember he had a black Sony KV CRT, and it was all, you're right, we was all about, now we've got home theater, now we've got this surround sound. We never talked about the quality of that CRT. Never once did we think about that.
And people want digital connection from the DVD players down, so you didn't get any loss through analog cabling and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why at all. I have no idea. It's apparently a thing of the tens or the zero. Now that we talk about RGB and video again, because I do remember that when you with your monitor for your PC, everybody talked about refresh rates and how well was the cable. But again, the same thing. Of course, if only 15 kilohertz is not that big of a deal. But still, the proper VGA cable had a lot to say about how your monitor performed in the end. So apparently, we were aware about it at in that respect. But nobody actually had the idea to transfer it back to their console or whatever. I don't know.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like a main. I think it wasn't just like a mainline idea. Like there was a lot of. You could easily go during this time period into a high fidelity audio store, and anybody could walk in there and be. I remember growing up. I remember that was one of the coolest places. You could go to like an big electronics store of some sort, and they'd always have this home theater room, and it was just like some insane lock. Like you close the doors, you press these buttons to turn on this specific speaker, and it would just like blow your hair back. And that was the big move. Lewis and I were literally talking about this before you came on. We were like, why? Because we were talking. It's so funny. I've been doing old LAN wiring in my basement here, my wood grain basement. I'm wiring Ethernet all over, and we're talking about wiring. And I was like, I have this ridiculous sound system that was like 7.1, and you're using 300 yards of stereo speaker wire to set all these speakers up, and that fad just kind of like went away. But like you say, at the same time, people weren't like, I need to do this for my video quality. It's like the same thing. It wasn't,
very little, at least.
It wasn't as passionate. No, there wasn't that kind of a scene. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, we were saying like that because it was 2.1 and 5.1 and you haven't got the 7.1 home theater, and I'm sure that still happens. But now I think with the way speakers have evolved, most people have just got a speaker bar. My friend has a speaker bar and it's got two detachables on either side that are remotely operated, so you don't even need wiring anymore. You take the speaker bar, flip off the two ends, put them to the back as your two rears, and you've basically got a amazing home theater system just off that. It's almost like sound has topped out now. What can you do more with sound?
Something like that. I still have a huge ass home stereo thing that I bought, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. I still have that with wires going through over my roof, or not my roof, my loft, or whatever you call it. And you know, I cannot move my television right now, because then I would have to rewire those speakers, and I'm not doing that. So our living room looks like it does, and that's it. And that is based on those speakers. That's how it is.
That's the exact same thing I was telling him. I was like, at my old house, I went in and I did the fancy thing where I like drilled a hole in a certain spot on the wall, and I set up all 7 of those speakers or whatever it was, and all around, and wired it to there, and then like, you know, pulled rope down to where I could pull them all out of the wall in a nice spot. But like you say, you're like, this is never. My wife hated it. She's like, when we moved to the new house, you can put all that in the basement, but we're not having that again. Whereas they were stuck there. And then it was funny because after like the last 10 years, I think I turned it on like twice a year.
Yeah, there we go.
You just like, don't mess with it. Just kids, whatever. But the audio thing, yeah, it kind of like, it topped out on its max, whatever it was going on back then, like, right. And then it kind of does seem to follow suit with the timeline of technology. That was at the period right where they started introducing flat screen televisions everywhere, so people had a new thing to go chase, and new flat screens were so expensive back then. That was the new gold standard, was trying to get just a flat screen in your house. At that time, you remember how you know.
Well, in the US, you had all these rear projection televisions, which, you know, was basically non-existing in Denmark, at least to my knowledge. I know.
You mean like the early high def stuff that was the
doesn't even have to be high def. You know, just these big 50-inch rear projection or whatever it was. You know, especially even just the big CRTs. You know, I don't think I've ever seen anything above 29-inch in Denmark that wasn't a 100 hertz widescreen 32-inch something. You know, these 37 and even 40-inch televisions that you have, you know, which must be humongous. You know, I have never seen anything like that in Denmark. I guess it must be again this premium, you know, space thing. That space is just a bit more of a premium in Denmark than it is in the US. I suppose it's just an idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of you know, open space in some places. Depending on where you live, if you're in a city, you're not going to have the same. But there was It's funny you mentioned that, because I'm having flashbacks of my grandmother and grandfather in Florida. They had this. It was completely wood box, and it was like 50 inches, 4x3 projection television with the worst picture you've ever seen on it. And this was early 90s, and I remember going over there, and my grandmother was also the first person. This same grandmother was the first person that I had ever seen had a regular Nintendo. And she got it, and she made me and my sister go watch her play it till she was tired of it. She's like, oh, yeah, come check it out. And she sat there and played for like an hour or two, and she's like, I'm tired of this. Now you guys can play. So she made us watch her play, but she was the one who owned the big TV, and the big TV was literally in the room next to the room where she had the Nintendo. And she would play the Nintendo on this little, you know, stupid 13-inch or less television. And I was always like, Grandma, why can't we put it on that big TV? And it was always like, oh, no, we can't risk any way of damaging that TV. The TV specialist says if we hook that Nintendo up, it'll screw it up. And it wasn't true. No, it wasn't true.
No, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. No,
because
true.
Like later on, you know, they kept the television till I met my wife, and it was like 2005-ish. And we would laugh because I would go take my regular Xbox and hook it up through composite to this TV, and it was terrible looking.
Oh, it must look terrible. Oh.
Yes, because the convergence was so bad. Everybody would have like a green, red, blue, like shadow hue around.
But who told
person.
the lie there? Grandma or the TV?
Oh, Grandma.
It was Grandma. Okay.
Oh, that's Grandma.
Yeah,
She's like, she didn't want anybody. See, it was one of those weird TVs that, like, if you pushed on the screen, it would like jump. Do you know?
Okay,
it was like a plastic. It was literally projected against some kind of like plastic screen, at least on the front end. And if you touched it, it felt like you could almost stick your hands kind of through it if you pushed it hard or something. It was really just like a weird...
Yeah, it's almost like a theater screen or whatever you call it.
It was, and it was
silver screen, like
super terrible.
But I remember that one of the few real projection TVs I saw in Denmark was, of course, something imported from the US, and then some guy had changed the mains voltage thing so it could run on the 230 volts. The problem was then that when you feed that a PAL signal, and it was only meant for the 480 lines, it looked like crap. Captions and subtitles, you couldn't read it at all because it was so jagged and everything. We were missing a lot of this. A lot of the image information was just got scrapped by whatever processor what it was in this stuff. It was atrocious, really, really, really. So I really have a thing against rear projection televisions, and it's based basically on that one television. So maybe that is unfair. I have no idea.
No, it's not unfair. They're complete trash. I remember that was like the first high def TV I got. Remember I think I told you, Lewis, how I had that college fire at my mom's house.
Oh yeah,
where my house had burned down, and I was in college. Yeah, this is a long time ago. I talked about it, but anyway. I had a college. I went to college. It was like right before you'd go to break to go home for Christmas, and it was the weekend before exams. And I went and I was like, well, I'm moving out, so I'd go ahead and move all my stuff back home, and then went back for exam weeks. And the house burnt like that Sunday night. The house just burnt from 3 levels all the way up. And after that, with the insurance money, we got one of these big widescreen DLP televisions that was still way wide, and it still had the weird even that late in the game. I want to say that would have been about 2002 or 3. They would still, those rear projection TVs, man, they'd still have that weird plastic front, and they were just, I mean, it was nice when it came out, kind of, because you were like, yeah, I got a big screen in the basement finally, but
too bad it sucked.
It's too bad it still sucked, yeah.
I see a few of, as I look around in Estonia online, occasionally a rear projection will come up, and they're all, like Martin says, 50 inches or something stupid, and how am I ever going to like do something with this? What I think happened in Estonia was we didn't get many rear projection TVs, but just before that, let's say, like you said, the widescreen 100 hertz, and even just before that, the golden age of the last great 4x3s, there's actually a fair amount of them here in Estonia. If you want a Sony Trinitron consumer model, just wait a few weeks. It'll come up, don't worry, and it'll only be like $20. And my theory is because Estonia, as it was coming out of the Soviet Union, so 91, 92, I mean, 91, 92, everyone's poor. No one's got no money. It's really tough. But as you start to get to the end of the 90s in Estonia, that's when people actually had a little money for the first time. They worked for 10 years. Estonia's opening up. Viva la, revolution. And we love capitalism. So... And a TV at that stage, I think, was one of the things you could afford. It was like an affordable luxury, an affordable symbol. So there's a whole lot of 95 to 2000 great consumer TVs because people wanted to show they're rich. And there's even a lot of, like, I find weird things from that time. I'll go to some friend's place and they live in a old Soviet apartment building. It's called a Khrushchevsky, named after Khrushchev, who was the Russian leader who basically stamped these things all over the Soviet Union. They all look the same. So it's some old concrete Soviet building, but inside they tried to renovate it. And I found a whole bunch of people had these weirdly techno showers. Like the shower wasn't just like a shower, like you go in with a little screen. It was like a whole unit, like a upright tank or something. And I started to again ask myself, why have you got this? And it's got like jets that squirt from up here and down here, and at every angle you could close this door and just be encased. And I'm like, why have these people got these crazy fucking showers everywhere? And eventually I settled on, again, it was the early luxuries that you could afford for a few hundred extra. You could feel like, oh, I'm showering.
I'm a king.
Yeah, I'm a king, right? That's how these things go. So, well, we're not doing the retro shower channel, so we're not talking about those.
Yeah, well, before we move off of bathrooms, I find this a very compelling conversation. My wife, she spent 3 years after she and I met her at the end of this. After she graduated college, she graduated with a degree in international business, I believe, and then she studied Japanese as a minor. So she went to like this place that is just in the middle of nowhere in Japan for 3 years and taught English.
Cool.
And the only reason I'm going back to this bathroom thing is she told me, over there in Japan, they don't have like toilets, like normal toilets. It's like a hole in the ground, and then like you squat over that hole and just hit that hole.
They have that in Spain.
It's so funny to
also.
me because like that is so, like in America that is so like people would not know what to do if they saw that. They'd probably poop their pants and just hold it if they walked into a bathroom and it looked like that. And I mean like grown people, like my grandparents or something would probably do that. They wouldn't know what to do.
It's still there. It's still.
What
if
are
you go to
guys?
Japan today,
I know they're still there because this is
still
what
there.
I've talked to her about. Yeah, and then I've watched videos where guys like, "Hey, let's go in this bathroom," and he's like, "Oh, look, toilet on the floor."
But they do it. They actually also exist in Europe.
So
at least,
I was going to say, what are your guys? Do you guys have normal toilets there in Europe?
In Denmark, yes. But with my workplace, I've been all around the world, and I know in some factories actually, I've seen these toilets like this. Where I remember, if when you're working in a foreign factory, you just have to ask them where's the toilet, and then they guide you to this place, and it's like, do you have another toilet that is not a hole in the ground?
Where's the real toilet?
Yeah, that was funny. Haha, where's the real toilet?
The thing with the Japanese, though, the Japanese as a culture, I guess, have gone from this traditional kind of hole in the ground thing to now it's fucking techno toilet. They've Japanese
they went to compete.
She said,
fucking Elon Musk is taken off to Mars.
Yeah, she said there was another guy in. So in the program she worked in, it was like they would send people from all over Western countries, right? European. She had friends from Australia, and they would do the same thing that she had done. They would get a work visa for 3 years to go teach English in a town in Japan, and they would just assign you a place. So she would meet other people, and she's like, yeah, well, mine was the whole, or I can't, it was always funny how she would talk to like other people, and they would have like a terrible bathroom, and then, because they would get assigned housing. It was like you get to rent an apartment as part of your job, and it was like you got assigned this house, and one of them got assigned a techno toilet, where it was like, they're like, man, you never want to use another toilet after you use this one. It's got, warmers. And I mean, this is like 20 years ago.
Water jets.
Like spray warm water all over you. Basically do all your work for you. It's like the choices. Could you imagine, like, if you, I would feel like I wouldn't care what town I was thrown in the middle of nowhere if I got the techno toilet. Compared to getting the crappy toilet, I would be like, yes, we win.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, God damn. All right. Well, talk, right?
Yeah, we got the I guess we could go on about toilets, but we'll move on. I'd love to have a techno toilet outside of Japan.
Tubes. So let's talk though about let's see some of the projects. Now I have been I feel kind of bad because I have not been able to like get up and cheer and make as much. Honestly, I have not. I've been holding your card, the 68x demo card, and I'm like, I don't want to make hype videos about this thing when we're talking about how we're still trying to get this initial run.
Yeah.
Now, once I talk to Ryan and like the run's ready, then I'll be ready to make like a good video about this card and everything, because it's kind of like the thing I was talking with Bob. I'm like, this is such an unfortunate time period. Because normally Martin would be like a hero, and everybody would just, all these people would have your stuff in their BVMs, and it's just like so disappointing that you finally get to the point where something like a BKM-68x has finally gotten reverse engineered and is buildable, no matter really the price. And even at that, it's almost impossible with the last 2 years.
It's so I don't know what you call it when I made the card, because I remember Bob called me up and say, hey, do you actually have a monitor that can take this card? And I'm like, yes. And then he got the card for me so I could look into it. And then I spent a lot of time on it, and I basically at some point I didn't give up, but I was like, ugh. And then when it finally works, just like, oh, you're really hyped up about it, and everything just then quickly went on, and I actually got something working. I sent the few pieces to Bob, so he made his video, and then this whole part shorter thing just crashed down. And I know Ryan has been working hard on trying to get the components. And, as far as I know, he has everything, and everything is hopefully going into production soon, as far as I understand. But it's just been a real anticlimactic when I had hoped that we can actually get this stuff out. And I know there's a lot of people who's been done the pre-orders at Ryan's, and they're like, where's my card? And he has to push the timeline all the time, or the time frame, whatever you call it. And it's just... I did the card because I wanted people to have the opportunity to actually do this. Now, what it seems, the only thing that it has done is that the A-series prices has skyrocketed, apparently. So I 6 months ago, you could see, I saw a guy who gave away an A20 because he didn't have the remote and there was no card. So he's like, nah, what can I do with this? It's just like, fast forward 3 months and he could sell it for, I don't know what they go for now because the American price is just whack, but I know he could get a little bit more than $50 for it. And it's just, but it's still, it's kind of sad because I wanted this stuff to get out there so we can also see, what issues might there be, if any, and we can improve it if needed. But until this shortage happens, and at least until Ryan gets the initial run coming in, then we are still somewhat in the dark.
So Martin, you admit to your market manipulation. I think Carl Jobster's going to be making a video about you. Look at you manipulating the BVM market.
Except, did I speak about that in Denmark? We have all more or less no monitor, so I have nothing to sell.
That's a moot point, Lewis. I would be the biggest. I would be already crowned as the biggest CRT market manipulator. It's so funny.
You are. It's all the Illuminati.
Stop manipulating CRTs.
All right. I always hunt on eBay just because I think it's fun, and you used to be able to find something every few months in the United States, but now it's just like a wasteland of like, it'll literally be like, I'll walk out in my garage and I'll look at a pile of crap that I have in a corner. And then I'll get on eBay and it'll say new PVM listing. Get this lot of 12 PVM CRTs for $7,000, and it looks worse than the crap lot. I'm like, when do I throw this away? Right? I'm looking at it and saying, when do I throw this away? Somebody else is like, oh, $7,000 pick up only. Come get your new CRT collection.
But
repairs needed.
In the US, it seems like there are some, or like a few very well-known retailers or whatever you would call them, like Save and Pat. But there was also a guy, Nick, I think he was called, or something. I don't know his real name or anything. I just remember that I have seen like a few, 3 or 4 names of people who seems to come up again and again and again. I'm sometimes thinking, are these guys? Have they been hogging the market or something like that, since they are always able to often shell out pretty, expensive hardware, and they seem to have it. I don't know how it works because it's just odd that these people always come up.
It's a shady thing where, and I don't get into it too much anymore. The guy Nick you're talking about, he still does have a store where he sells BVMs and PVMs, but he's been relegated to Etsy.
Okay.
Where like I know that, I don't know the story behind it. He got finally booted off eBay. He was doing things against their policy, and this is no argument. Like, there's no arguing it. He did it, and he would get called out for it because you'd list a 20L5 or a BVM D20, and then you'd sell it. He'd sell it for market value, right? But he would list the same damn pictures. Like, you have 25 of them. Instead, you just take a picture of one of them in your warehouse, and then you send it around. Well, you start selling these things at thousands and thousands of dollars to nerds like us. And if they get it in, what's the first thing they're going to start doing is comparing what they got to the pictures that they were sent. Yeah. And then it's obvious when you include a serial number that's like a VIN number from this monitor in your picture, and it doesn't match the one you've got. I mean, it's like dead giveaway. And it's like, and he kept reusing the same pictures. So eventually, somehow, he got himself finally banned from eBay. And he's been over to Etsy. People have said he does a good job, but he definitely sells things at a premium. I heard a story that he just basically got a shit ton of monitors out west off of like auctions before anybody knew what they were. And it was like, you go out to California, and if you had 10 grand, you know, and some guy was closing up his rental shop where he had 150 grand worth of monitors, if you had 10 grand, you could buy all of them, right? I mean, if you had 10 grand cash you were going to give him, you could buy all of them. So I think that's what he kind of did. And then he only takes you 3 or 4 monitors at the price he's selling them to get your money back. Yeah. And so I knew that he was doing that. And then I'd talked to other people, again, 3 or 4 years ago that were in California where he's at. And they're like, yeah, I went and I've been trying to get this guy to give me monitors. And then the day he says he wants to sell to me, Nick showed up. The same guy had like bought them all before him. And I was like, well, you can't. I was like, this guy is just being a businessman, unfortunately. So you can't. Yeah, you got to be ready to American pay for some of these ways. Yeah, if you got the money, some guy, you walk out the door without the merchandise, you know, somebody behind you could walk in and give the money and it'd just be gone, no matter what the person promised you.
Yeah, so, for sure.
I know that's what kind of goes on. I was very upset with the way the guy would do business back when he was on eBay, and I did make some videos kind of calling him out on it. And
okay.
Ever since then, it's kind of been quiet from him. But you know, it's just there's not as many. There's not as it's gotten a lot more limited on who sells them. Yeah, like you said, they think they've gotten a gold mine.
Yeah. I see the few broadcast people that I do have contact with here in Denmark, which is of course because I'm not from the broadcast community at all. So I have to go to Facebook, ask around, do you know this guy? And the problem is still that the value of the monitors is still to them so high that when I come in and say I'll pay you $100 or the equivalent of $100, just go like, what? Really? No, right. Because they paid $10,000 for them 10 years ago, and so it I think although I saw one guy who was actually still using them, though he was using his A20s in his setup, but otherwise they are still in basements, and I think the people who actually have space for them, they if they think that they're worth a shit ton of money, and I guess they also, after you find the right customer, then everything is worth a shit ton of money. But I think there's just a lot of still holding on to them because it has value to them still to some degree. I know another guy, he had one that was calibrated. He paid a lot of money to have this one color calibrated and everything. So he just used it as a reference monitor and used it, meaning it sat in his corner so he could use it if he was ever going to, even though he didn't. But, it had some affectionate value to him. And I suppose that you will also battle with stuff like that to some degree with broadcasters who, especially smaller broadcasters, all the big broadcasting houses in Denmark, we don't have that many, but the few that we have, they've all either they've sold everything or they keep some of it, for as props or something like that for TV productions, I suppose so.
Yeah, that's kind of. I think that the U.S. isn't that far behind that. It's a lot rarer for me to see people getting loads off of broadcast studios or places like that anymore. Those are really becoming few and far between. You'd hear about it a lot 3 or 4 years ago, but a lot of that stuff has been dried up and picked through. And
it says something
people
about
who are
the
hunting
hobby that
have found it, but then I'm
it
sure
says
there's
something
still
about
some
our
out
hobby.
there.
Like what
Yeah, but
happens? It's kind of drying up, you know.
Exactly. You know, what will actually happen to the hobby when you know the monitors are sold, and you know, I have a lot of monitors, and I don't think I can't use them at all. But you know, I have like, you know, I want to keep it because if one breaks, then I'll have another one. It's just so stupid. But you know, and but the thing is, you know, how many people actually have these big stashes, and then the market is like, that's it. As we also see these new scalers coming out, like the RetroTink and the OSSC and everything, then I guess we also are to somewhat, it will be devaluating, if you can call it that, the hobby, and then only the hardcore people who, you know, likes the CRT for pure nostalgia and not just looks, because I think the looks is also a thing, but I don't know. It's a tough decision,
Yeah.
but all these CRT scalers that, you know, they have, or filters, CRT filters that they put on the scaler, so you can more or less get the same feeling of the image with these ones than just like the real thing.
Well, close to the real thing. I personally,
of course,
there's always, no matter how much you can mimic the image, but you can't mimic the rest of the CRT. You know, it's
the
there's
whole
always
glass thing and
oh yeah, the glass, the body,
yeah,
the shape,
yeah.
the sound, the feel. Like you can't go and feel
The
like
loss of volumetric space.
static. Yeah, no, like the
Is
broken
there something
backs.
to that? Because this, it's kind of come out in the last, I want to say, even 6 months. All of a sudden now, Mister's got these amazing CRT filters. There's a lot of work done on filters. And I feel like a lot of people are genuinely getting excited for that, and I'm good for you. And we're an hour and 15 into this, so I can be
I
a
didn't
dick.
even think about it.
So, but I'm like sitting back there going, have all the filters you want, but I've got my stack here of precious beauties.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep telling yourself it looks exactly like a CRT. Good work. Yes.
Yeah, good.
I'm happy with people like making those filters. That's fine. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's exactly. I'm like, I've got 60 CRTs. Why am I? I don't really care about CRT filters. If I want a different look, I can go grab a different CRT.
Yeah, grab a different
But
monitor.
That's just because I'm a weirdo with too many CRTs in my house.
Well,
But
you are
Mark,
probably
so like
max
the way
weirdo in our hobby,
let's
Steve.
before we jump off here, let's jump
Yep.
back and like if anybody's still here, like at this point, I'm sure there's a few people.
We should edit out the toilet stuff.
Besides our yeah, if they made it through, besides my relatives, right? Besides those.
Yeah.
No. So the one project though that you're working on now, that's the controller.
Yeah.
That should be a little easier, hopefully, for people to get parts for. You think? I mean, I hate
Yeah,
to say
you know,
that.
all this stuff, you know, it again, it
'Cause even-
depends on how it's gonna, you know, what's it gonna look. But you know, what I showed you, these small pieces of PCB stuff you can buy from AliExpress or whatever, so you can get something running. Since I want to put it into a small 3D printed box with a small PCB, then of course that's still something. But you can see the parts shortage is basically from the, you know, all these hardcore components like FPGAs especially, which is just like it's a wasteland. There are no FPGAs out there basically available. And so for this one, it's I think it's much easier. I don't think it's that big a problem. Another project I actually want to do is that I want to try to look into making a composite and S-video decoder, so we can make the BKM-129W card and you know, the BKM-61D, all these stuff. It could be interesting to try to be able to do that. There is this one transcoder, I don't know how to pronounce it, the Koryu or something like that.
Cordial.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah. And I would basically like to try to do something like that, open source. You know, a lot of the hardware of the Koryu is open source apparently, but not everything. And I just wanted to try to, is it really possible to make an open source a composite decoder? And because that would make us give the option to try to make all these other cards that people also want. Because RGB is fine and component is fine, but we still have composite only consoles also, and people would just like composite only. And so for the D9 and the D14, which it has no composite, and then, you know, why not try to do that also? So that's also another project.
You're talking about baking that into a card, not just a separate transcoder into...
Exactly. You know, the thing is that, of course, if the Koryu or whatever if that was open source, I think I just had taken that and smacked it onto a card and be done with it. But since it isn't, I wanted to try to see, is it really possible to make at least because I know the Koryu uses two chips, which are off-the-shelf parts. One which digitizes the signal, and then one which moves it back into the analog domain. And both those two chips are just off-the-shelf components. And I wanted to try to at least replicate one of them, the digital to the analog part, because maybe then at least again, the more parts we can get rid of being reliant on from the industry, the more we can keep the the hobby going and the opportunities for everybody to make new stuff better.
So on this card, are you saying that this one would, like the composite card, that won't need, you're thinking you can design that without the need of an FPGA?
No, it will need an FPGA. I'm pretty
that's
sure.
what I was thinking. It still need
it will.
that,
So that sucks pretty hard, because then there we are again with an FPGA that we can't get. But
those are good cards. Like I've got a 61D, and you're right, it does. It's the only card like for that A series that will do composite and S video. And even that card now is impossible to find.
It's actually becoming exceedingly rare, and I suppose a lot of that is because of the 68X was or is still somewhat unavailable. So then people were at least able to buy that card instead. But then I would like to have, the more options we have to getting rid of all these crazy cards, of which there are so few, the better. And especially the thing with the remote is also a thing, because I'm pretty sure that there must exist more monitors than remotes in the world. So
there are definitely more monitors and remotes, because again, most of the situations with these high broadcast monitors, it would be one remote controlling 5-6 displays.
Exactly.
Or sometimes a lot of them didn't even buy remotes. They relied on a remote that was built into a 14-inch BVM.
Oh yeah,
a lot of them had that, and they would use that as the control monitor for all the larger ones.
So I think that will also make more of these monitors more available. Simple. Again, this the 11R version here is something because I didn't reversion engineer the BKM-10R protocol. Another guy has done that. I just took it, and I'm trying to make something that is producible, so a guy like Ryan can actually make ready to go off the shelf units that is sellable either on eBay or wherever. But just so, because even though that I like tinkering, I know that a lot of people just want something that they can plug in and then it works. So I suppose this is what I would like to try to do and make it more available to people.
I like that idea. Also, because I think composite on a BVM is great. If anyone ever thinks that a BVM is a bit too sharp, run composite in, and I like the balance of the two, just to be a crazy guy. Okay, I got an expensive BVM and I run shitty composite in. So I think that's cool, that card. Hey, well, Martin, I had an extra question.
Sure.
Kind of similar, which I listened to the last interview you did with Bob, and I think I didn't understand. You made a reference that early on, when you were designing the first card, I think the first card was the 129. Is that
129X? Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm getting confused, but you made a reference that at first you had a weird connector plug that it was a bit unsure what it was. Did you have some, or did I misunderstand that there was a weird connector on an early version?
A weird connector?
Yeah, like a weird external plug. Maybe I've heard that conversation wrong, because I was like, what is this weird connector?
I'm not sure, because the 129X was actually extremely easy to do. Extremely easy. I can do everything. No, but it was.
I guess in comparison to the
exactly in comparison. No, but the 129X, there were no really big issues with that. I don't know if maybe what I was talking with Bob about was that when I first started up the 68X and started listening into the data coming into the monitor, there was so much data because I had no idea what I was looking at, because I was plugged into the main bus of the whole monitor. So I was seeing the data coming to the power supply, to the deflection board, and I didn't know what was what, because on the 129X I only had the communication only for that single card, so I knew what to look for. But on the 68X I just had everything, so I had to figure that out. So I know maybe that was maybe that was what you were
Maybe
referencing
that's.
to.
I think I
I
was
don't know,
listening on the
because-
bus or something.
I don't remember any weird plugs, at least.
Also, I read. I was going through your blog today, and I think for the 129X, you referenced on your blog a language setting, and that could be English or Japanese. And you implied in the blog that the game, like the monitor, could have an English or Japanese setting, and that was fed back into the game. I think you call it Quackshot, the game. Again,
What?
have I misunderstood?
Did you read my blog?
Your blog, yeah, Imahux.
Yeah.
No, that other Martin blog, yeah, that other.
Martin bug.
I just
I don't
searched
know.
for. You go to your.
An example is. Oh no! Oh, I think this is. Wait. What? So what about the? This is something for the Mega Drive.
Oh yes, I remember seeing.
I don't even remember writing this, but I can see I did write something about Quackshot. An example is Quackshot. What? Huh. But this has nothing to do with the monitor. This is simply just how the game.
It's in the Mega Drive.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been scrolling through everything, but I guess because when you look at the page, it just comes all the way down there. But this was just because I wanted to try to make a more recent version of the how to make these 50 and 60 hertz thing. And there's a lot of within this whole modding community, there's a lot of confusion about what is really the truth about why something happens and everything. So I just try to document something a little more than I usually see, because a lot of guys is just like do this, and then something works. And I'd like to try to see why do you have to do this, because this and that and this and this. But Quackshot cannot make your monitor speak Japanese. It cannot.
Right, now I get it. I gotta stop reading these things on the bus on the way home.
That's the hot take right there.
I was like, dang, the monitor talks back to the thing and tells it. Jesus.
You're like, I just hacked Quackshot on the Mega Drive to make my BVM speak Japanese. There's the hot take. It's not possible yet.
Sorry.
We got
I have no further
FPGA
questions.
shortage. Sorry.
Lewis has no more dumb questions. He's good.
But I can see it. I don't know why because when I look into the I'm right now. I hit my webpage somehow, or this blog, and it says version in the Sony BKM-129x, and then if I just start scrolling through it, then it just easily goes into this Sega Mega Drive 2 thing. It's really hard to see that they are two different
It just looks like one of the craziest hacks
so
you've ever seen.
I come from Arduino into region modding a Mega Drive. Okay, I understand why you're confused.
Now I get it. That's how.
I can see that.
No,
that's WordPress for you, apparently. I haven't done
everybody
that on
WordPress, yeah. That everybody go familiarize yourself with what we're talking about here. Check out Martin's blog page. It's awesome. I mean, it's the cool thing is, like I said, he's done a great job, much better than even I have. I'm constantly worried about this, just like, again, because at the same time, I've made over 300 videos about CRTs. How does anything get you end up losing stuff in your own pile? It's like you got a pile of this information, and then now I need a library to direct it. But yours is awesome because, again, I love that you could go back and pretty much easily find information that's cataloged from a long time ago.
But this is actually funny because the whole blog has never meant to be a blog. It was meant to be a notebook for myself. So if you go back to the earliest of the articles, you can see it's something like, why is my Microsoft Office 365 installation getting stuck? And that was because at my work, I was also doing some of the IT stuff from time to time. And I just kept having the same problems over and over. So I documented it for myself, because I thought if I had these problems, then probably other people had the same stuff. So that's why you can also see some of it is about some water faucet from IKEA. Where, how can you actually dismantle one or disassemble one or whatever? I can't remember how it is, but there's a lot of stuff, and it's only until 2018 or 17 that it actually starts getting oriented about, towards the CRT and the console stuff.
I got to admit, I don't think I ever made it past the Quackshot posted.
No.
So I didn't get to see the archives about the IKEA faucet.
If you go to February 2017, you would see that I think I apparently found out what kind of wrench I needed to be able to pick out some the filter. Blah, whatever. But it's still there if somebody wants to replace the filter on his IKEA Delt Care aerator.
Whew, man, if we have one viewer that solves the problem for, they definitely better give us at least a thumbs up tonight.
Well, boys, should we wrap it up a little bit?
Yeah, I was going to say it's been an hour and a half. I don't want to go on too long. I mean, what do you think, Lewis? Is there anything else you had questions for Martin? Or?
I think I'm done with my questions. I've been through we asked questions.
Yeah, I don't know if Martin, if there's anything that like you want to mention. Just, I mean, you're definitely welcome. I think it would be great if once the stock situation becomes where at least the first run's available on the 68X, you come on, and maybe we can play with it.
Yeah, sure. You know what I would really like. I would really like that people, if they want, you know, if they read the blog. There was a guy who contacted me the other day, and he was like, he said he felt a bit like honored to be able to speak to me. I was like, honored, really? You know, it's like,
nice.
and you know, people maybe just because I've done some of these things that some people find really cool, and that's of course really nice. But please, if there are anyone who has any questions or something, just write me. You know, my email should be scattered around here somewhere, I suppose. So, you know, just write me with whatever questions or suggestions or something that you have. You know, in the beginning when I made the 129X, people started writing me about, hey, can you do the 68X? And just like, no. and people just constantly hammering me. And at the time, I actually made a small piece of email that I could just copy and paste in why I wouldn't do the 68X. And then I did it a couple of months later, but that's another story. But so I can say, please don't write about me about the 68X. I actually, if anyone out here builds one themselves, then please let me know what issues you have or whatever. If you find something, it would be cool to know, because there are really not a lot of these cars still out there due to the shortage. So.
Yeah, and I'm not, like I said, I've been fortunate enough to I found a 68X normal, and then I'm waiting with your card, and I'm like, I'm told Bob, I'm like, I'm not pushing anymore. It was literally one of the things I had a conversation with by that dollhouse with him.
Yeah,
I was like, I feel terrible because I really love everything Martin's done, and I just feel like it just sucks because I can't sit here and just keep... Again, like you know what happens if I sit here and build the hype for it? Like you said, the only thing that's going to happen is the A-Series BVM is going to become more expensive, and it doesn't really help anything. It's just going to get more people who have already paid and been waiting. It's going to get them anxious.
Yeah.
That's not fair for you, because you're doing all this work and open sourcing it or selling, giving all your information out. And then one more thing, if you're looking for Martin, you can easily find him on all forms of social media, I think.
Yeah,
because I've seen you post just about everywhere.
Yeah, usually in the Facebook groups, the CRT collective and the professional video blah 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 monitors group. I usually post everything there, and of course Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that. Again, it's basically, it's not to commercialize on myself, because there are no ads on my website or anything. But it's I just want to, the more we spread information, usually that's the better. So it's the whole idea of it.
Good. I like it.
Great
Nice
stuff.
way to wrap it up then, I think.
It is.
All right,
thanks
Martin,
a bunch, Martin. Thanks for
stay on the
joining us.
line, Martin, but I'll end the recording pretty soon.
Sure.
So,
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for blessing me with your stories about toilets.
We'll never forget it.
All right.
Martin, we finally got Martin online, and he talked with us for 20 minutes about
20 minutes about toilets.
That's all he talks about,
Isn't
Martin.
this the CRT part?
He's good with the
plumbing,
cards, but the toilets.
The plumbing.
No. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Wait. Stop recording. Yes, stop recording. There.